This is like the 7th time I'm recording this, so this is fantastic. But yeah, also thank you so much for leaving your comments on the previous video, talking to me about like what comics you want to see reviewed next from the Spider-Man comics, because we did used to review like the Evolve or Die, One More Day, Back in Black, so it'd be good to get back to sagas like that where they're not 160 issues long. Oh, and I also just want to make a correction. In the previous video, I accidentally said that that artwork was by Mark Bagley. Obviously, Mark Bagley left in Ultimate Spider-Man issue 111. I'm just dumb. It's been Stuart Immonen ever since issue 111, so wipe that mistake from your memory and forget that I ever said it. Anyway, this is the review for Ultimate Spider-Man issue 124, and as you can see by the front cover, this issue is going to feature the Beetle, who you'll obviously know really well because he was in the Ultimate Spider-Man video game. I'm pretty sure he's just an Ultimate Universe villain if I remember, but I could be wrong. Now, if you remember in the previous issue, we had the entire comic from the perspective of Eddie Brock / Venom, and we saw him go up against Silver Sable as well as start realizing that he could potentially be connected to Spider-Man. You'll also notice the events we're reading about in the comics right now are directly from the Ultimate Spider-Man video game, so a lot of the stuff that you see in these issues you're going to kind of recognize on a nostalgic level because you would have most likely already played it in the video game. Now, towards the end of the issue, we could see that Venom and Spider-Man started fighting each other, and we could also see that Silver Sable turned up just at the right time, and then it cut back to Eddie Brock sat on the park bench, so we don't actually know what happened at the end of that fight properly, but we're going to see it in this issue that we read next. Again, if you've got anything to say, leave it in the comments below, but in the meantime, let's get into Ultimate Spider-Man issue 124. So we're opening up the issue and we're going back to a few weeks ago when Venom and Spider-Man are fighting at the museum. Silver Sable's there and she takes down Venom. Now, these events are very similar to the Ultimate Spider-Man video game, as you'll probably notice, and get a little bit of nostalgia with it. And as far as we know, obviously Eddie was still sat on the bench when he was telling us that story in the previous issue, and you can see that Spider-Man is actually getting the headaches the same as what Eddie Brock was getting when he was close to Spider-Man as well. But going over to Peter and Mary Jane back at school, this is where the Spider-Man video game comes into it, because if you remember, Spider-Man had a hole in his costume in his butt, and it didn't really explain it, it was just kind of there in the video game. Whereas here, we can see that Spider-Man actually got it from the fight with Rhino. So yeah, the comics do actually explain further details, which is quite interesting. But speaking of interesting, Mary Jane actually mentions that Peter should probably get a doctor's check to see whether his powers are actually causing him some kind of crazy headaches or anything of the sort. And it made me laugh this because it's kind of like, why would she mention this now? We're literally near the end of the entire Ultimate Spider-Man series and she chooses now to tell him to go to a doctor. Like, I know he's got a headache and everything, but surely you should have gone to a doctor like in issue 20 or something. But anyway, moving on. So as you can see on screen, we are introduced to the Beetle, who is an Ultimate Spider-Man villain. I'm actually not sure if he's in any of the like 616 comics or anything like that, but I definitely know him from the Ultimate Spider-Man video game. And what I love about this interaction is Spider-Man just seems so annoying. From a villain's perspective, Spider-Man gets taken out, he disappears, and 2 seconds later he pops back up again as if nothing has happened. And I just love how comical this interaction is. Spider-Man literally carrying on the conversation as if he's been like waiting there for Beetle to arrive. It's just so funny. And what makes it more comical is the fact that Beetle isn't a very vocal character, so you really don't get any expression or emotion from him, but you can tell under that armor he's finding Spider-Man annoying, or at least wondering what the hell Spider-Man is. And I think it just shows how Spider-Man does this with ease. Like, it's not really difficult for him to keep up with a villain such as Beetle, because he kind of just takes it in his stride. He just does it and continues the conversation. Like, it's just so good. I love how confident Spider-Man is becoming in his abilities and all that stuff. It's just great to see something like this, and you don't really feel like Spider-Man's in danger. You feel like he's just kind of seeing what the situation's about, which is what you want. Now, as we get through meeting Beetle, you can see that he's got a range of weapons with him. Some of them kind of remind me of Darkseid's powers, because Darkseid from the Justice League animated series and obviously the DC universe, he has these laser eyes that will literally incinerate you, but they also follow you. And Beetle has pretty much the same weapons, so that was pretty cool. But as we get through the issue, you can see that the Beetle is going into Roxxon, and the reason why this is interesting is because Roxxon over the recent issues has been brought up even more. We had it from Shocker, we had it from back when the Vulture was part of Roxxon and all this stuff. And so it sparks that curiosity again with Roxxon, because these guys keep popping up over and over again, but they kind of keep a low profile. They don't really do anything too crazy, but they seem to be coming more into the comics as we get through them. And again, going back to the Ultimate Spider-Man video game, you'll remember something like this with the Beetle in the game as well. Now, going off the top of my head, I actually can't remember what the heck he's trying to get, but it kind of looks like the Venom symbiote or something like that at least. As you can see on the pages, Spider-Man gives Beetle the name of the Beetle. And I love even more the fact that Spider-Man is the one who gave Beetle his name, but the artwork looks really, really good. And now I'm not talking about like the artwork in terms of like the penciling or anything like that, but I'm talking about the blends of colors and how you have like the horizon skyline technically of New York, and then you've got like this dark silver laboratory. It kind of looks cold. Anyway, moving on, Beetle has escaped, and one of the test tubes actually landed on the floor, smashed, and you can see it actually kind of looks like the Venom symbiote. So I'm wondering if there's like other samples of the symbiote or anything like that. Now remember, I'm literally just going off the top of my head when I'm trying to remember some of the details of this. So moving on to the next day, Peter's back at the Daily Bugle talking to Mary Jane and obviously researching Roxxon. And again, Roxxon comes up with the potential news that they're working with someone from Latveria, and Latveria obviously hints to Doctor Doom, which is really scary because Doctor Doom's a crazy villain. So imagine having Doctor Doom in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics. And obviously I've already read this comic before, but going back over it again, I'm really surprised with how many characters are squeezed into this comic. We had Silver Sable and Venom at the beginning, we've got Spider-Man, we've got Mary Jane, we've got Peter Parker's life, we've got the Beetle, and now we have Nick Fury on the rooftop telling Spider-Man to stay away from this. And I just love it. It really shows how smart Nick Fury is to tell Spider-Man not to do something and hoping that he does the complete opposite. And it's just great because, again, it's going back to that development of the Ultimate Spider-Man characters and Brian Michael Bendis really knowing how to flesh out these things. And if Nick Fury's putting Spider-Man on something, then you kind of feel a lot safer, if you get what I mean. Like, as a reader, you don't really feel like Spider-Man's going to be in too much danger, but we'll see. Now, as we close off the end of the issue, we go back to that fight with Spider-Man and Venom. Venom gets taken away by Silver Sable, and this is actually what happens in the Ultimate Spider-Man video game. Yeah, that's where the issue leaves us, and I really liked it. Okay, so that issue was pretty good, and what I liked about it was that obviously we had the whole comic from the perspective of Spider-Man, but it made the previous issue so much better as well, because now both comics are sort of intertwined with each other, following the same events, but from two different perspectives, and it comes across as quite unique. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen the movies Insidious, which are horror movies. Insidious 1 is kind of like just a normal horror movie, but the second one makes the first generic one not generic anymore because yeah, it's good. Now, for the villains in this comic, we actually had a few. We had Venom, we had Spider-Man himself, and then we also had, obviously, Silver Sable, and then the Beetle as well. Now, I've got to say, I loved the first interaction with Beetle, just because it kind of showed off how annoying Spider-Man really can be towards his enemies. So every time Beetle got away from him, Spider-Man just kind of reappeared again every 2 seconds. But I do want to point out, keep an eye on the fact that Roxxon keeps popping up in this series more and more as we get through these comics, because we are building up to the Ultimatum event, which is towards issue 130. But yeah, that was the review for Ultimate Spider-Man issue 124, guys. Thank you so much for watching. It's always super appreciated, and I'm so glad that you're still loving the videos. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. But in the meantime, if you want to hit the subscribe button right here for other videos, and obviously if you want to click here, you can see the reviews for One More Day, and if you click here, you can see the reviews for Spider-Man Evolve or Die, where Spider-Man nearly dies. So enjoy those. See you later.